Reports. We all encounter them, right? They're, well, fundamental. They're how organizations get feedback, how big decisions get made, how we track progress. But let's be honest, writing a good professional report, that's not just admin work. It's really an art form. It requires synthesis, clear communication, and importantly, unbiased investigation. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on communication logistics, specifically Module 5, business report writing. We've got a really dense, distilled summary of the core concepts here. And our mission, yours and ours, is crystal clear. Extract every critical definition, every process step, every key detail needed to truly master how these professional reports are built. Think of it as the blueprint for formal business communication. So why should you, the learner, care about mastering this architecture? Well, because reports are basically the bedrock of accountability in any organization. They provide that essential feedback loop for evaluation, for planning what's next, and critically for management to step in and take corrective action if things aren't working. A flawed report, that can lead to a really flawed decision.
Absolutely. That's the core idea. So let's start with the basics. What is a report? Simply put, it's a presentation, a summary of facts, figures, information you've gathered through investigation. But a business report, well, that's more specific. Our source material defines it precisely as, and I'm quoting here, an orderly, unbiased communication of factual information that serves some business purpose.
Orderly, unbiased, factual, and purposeful. Those seem like the key words.
Exactly. It's the final documented output of any kind of investigation, internal or external. Now, the tricky part, and also the interesting part, is that the format isn't fixed. It really has to adapt based on why you're writing it and who you're writing it for. CEO versus project manager. It's different needs, different formats.
Makes sense.
But the underlying value is always the same. Good report writing takes something complex, maybe messy, and distills it down into simple, actionable insights, those suggestions at the end. That's often what drives the next steps for the business.
Okay, let's unpack that process. The sources we looked at really hammer home that the planning stage, well, it might be the most critical part, even more than the actual writing.
It's all about front-loading the effort, really.
The idea seems to be prevention, right? Plan thoroughly, structure everything up front, and you minimize the chance of finding major errors or omissions later when it's much harder to fix.
Precisely. And because it's so critical, the planning process itself is actually broken down into 5 specific sequential steps. It's vital to know this exact order.
Okay, 5 mandated steps. Let's walk through them. Step 1.
Step 1, define the problem and purpose. Right at the outset, you absolutely must clarify the fundamental nature of the report. What is it trying to achieve? Is it primarily informational, just presenting facts, comparing data points, or is it analytical?
Okay, that sounds like a key distinction. Informational versus analytical.
It's a crucial fork in the road. If it's analytical, you have to formulate a clear, specific, probably quantifiable problem statement, because the analysis of that problem is the whole point, the main thrust of the report.
So the purpose dictates the approach from the very beginning.
Completely. An analytical report needs an answer. An informational report needs clear documentation. That choice shapes everything that follows, structure included.
All right, so we've defined the problem and purpose. What's step 2?
Step 2. Outline the issues for investigation. This is essential, especially for those analytical problem-solving reports we just mentioned. You take the main problem and you break it down. What are the specific, manageable sub-issues that feed into the bigger problem? If you map these out clearly at the start, it makes organizing the actual report body much, much easier later on. You ensure all the angles are covered.
It's like creating a detailed map before you start the journey.
Yeah.
Scope in the work.
Exactly, good analogy. Which leads directly into step 3, prepare a work plan. Now we move from the what the problem to the how, the execution.
The logistics.
Pretty much. This is where you ask the procedural questions. What's the best way to collect the data we need? Are there specific research methods or compilation strategies we need to stick to? It's about planning the resources, the time, the methodology before you dive in.
Okay, problem defined, issues outlined, work plan set. Step 4 must be the actual work.
Step 4 is conduct research, analysis, and interpret. And our sources flag this as, well, often one of the toughest parts. You gather the raw data, then you analyze it, and then you interpret what that analysis means.
And the key challenges here are?
2 main things. First, absolute accuracy in the analysis itself. Get the numbers wrong, the statistics wrong, and the whole thing collapses. Second, and this is critical, maintaining complete objectivity in the interpretation.
Avoiding bias.
Yes. Any personal bias creeping in here just corrupts the report's value entirely. It has to be purely data-driven interpretation.
Which logically leads to the final step. Step 5. Draw conclusions. This is where it all comes together. Based on that objective analysis, you draw clear conclusions.
And following those conclusions, you typically make recommendations or suggestions for action. But there's a really important organizational detail here, often a point of focus.
Okay.
If the report is being written by a subordinate, basically, anyone who isn't the final decision maker, they can generally only offer suggestions or recommendations.
They can't make the final call themselves.
Exactly. The authority to make the final decision, the authoritative conclusion, rests with higher management. The subordinate provides the analysis and the options, but doesn't own the implementation decision.
That really highlights the report's role in the hierarchy, doesn't it? Informing decisions, not necessarily making them at that level.
Precisely. The writer provides the groundwork, the evidence, the analysis, but the ultimate risk and authority lie higher up.
Before we move off planning, there was another foundational point mentioned, right? About asking the core questions.
Ah, yes. The 5 W's and 1 H. It's a classic framework, but really useful here. Before you even start step 1, or perhaps as part of it, you need to ask, what is the problem? Why does it matter? What data do we actually need? Who is this report for? When is it due? Where might the solution be implemented? And crucially, how are we going to get the data?
So embedding those questions ensures that work plan in step 3 is really robust. It covers all the bases.
It definitely helps structure the thinking from the very beginning.
Okay, planning nailed down. Now let's talk about the actual documents. Reports aren't all the same, are they? They get classified in different ways.
That's right. They vary based on things like their purpose, their audience, their structure. We can group them into 3 main classification sets.
3 main groups.
Yep. First, based on sheer size, long and short reports. Second, based on, let's say, their structural rigidity, formal and informal reports. And third, based on their context or field, business technical reports versus academic research reports.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Length seems pretty straightforward, long versus short.
It is, but the implications matter. Long reports, as you'd expect, involve lengthy, detailed analysis. Think of a major project review or a deep investigation. They obviously take a lot of time to create and also to read and digest.
And short reports.
Short reports are built for speed and focus, usually just 1 to 3 pages. They cover a very specific topic or event concisely, like a trip report or a quick update on a single issue.
Okay, length is clear. What about the second distinction, formal versus informal? This sounds more critical for business.
It really is. Formal reports are the standard in most organizations for anything important. They follow strict rules, proper structure, careful referencing, citations. They're almost always submitted upwards to a higher authority for approval or serious analysis.
And the key ingredient.
Substantiated facts. Formal reports rely only on proper facts and figures that you can trace back, verify, prove. No guesswork allowed.
Okay, so what defines an informal report then? Where do they fit in?
Informal reports are typically for more internal, maybe personal use, or for quick, low-stakes communication within a team. Think meeting minutes sometimes, or a quick progress note. They might sometimes rely on approximations or, educated guesses, especially if a quick estimate is needed and precision isn't paramount. But, and this is key for anyone working in a structured company, most reports you prepare in a corporate setting will need to be formal reports because they back up significant decisions and create an accountability trail.
Right, the stakes are higher. So sticking with that formal business world, let's look at the third category, classifying business reports by their purpose.
Okay, so these are the reports prepared within an organization for formal reasons. We can break these down further based on why they were created. This gives us 4 main types to know: routine, special, informational, and analytical.
We already touched on informational and analytical earlier in planning. Let's start with routine and special.
Sounds good. Let's kick off with routine reports. The name says it all, really. These are prepared on a regular, predictable schedule. They're part of the normal rhythm of the business, fulfilling recurring needs.
Okay, what are some common examples of these routine reports?
Our sources list 4 key types you should definitely recognize. First, the progress report. This tracks how things are going, usually for an ongoing project or maybe the overall health of a department or the company over a set period. Keeps everyone in the loop.
Makes sense. What's second?
Second, the inspection report. These are absolutely vital in areas like manufacturing, quality control, safety, compliance. Typically, a superior or an auditor checks if products, services, or processes are meeting the required standards or norms. It's a check against a benchmark.
Okay. Progress inspection. Third.
Third is the performance appraisal report, often just called the PAR. This is a core HR function, though managers usually conduct them. It's the formal process of assessing and evaluating an employee's performance over a period.
The basis for promotions, raises, that sort of thing.
Exactly. These PARs feed into decisions about compensation, training needs, career development. They're usually compiled and sent up to management for review.
And the fourth type of routine report.
The periodical report. Again, fairly self-explanatory. These are prepared at fixed, regular intervals. Think weekly sales figures, monthly budget updates, quarterly reviews, or the big one, the company's annual report. They provide regular snapshots.
Okay, so progress, inspection, PAR, and periodical. Those are the routine ones tied to the calendar or regular cycles. What about the flip side? The special reports.
Right. Special reports are triggered by specific events or circumstances, not by a schedule. They happen only when something unusual or non-routine occurs that needs documentation or investigation.
So event-driven, what kinds fall under this category?
Three main types are highlighted. First, the investigation report. This gets commissioned when something unexpected or problematic happens, say a sudden, sharp drop in sales or a major failure in production or a security breach. The goal is to dig deep and find the root cause.
Investigating anomalies. Makes sense.
Second type. Second is the survey report or feasibility report. These are used for assessment, maybe assessing current working conditions or analyzing sales trends in detail, or very commonly evaluating whether a new project, a new product launch, or entering a new market is actually viable.
So looking before you leap. Assessing feasibility.
Precisely. It's a critical step before committing significant resources. Is this actually doable and likely to succeed?
Okay, investigation, feasibility survey, and the third special report.
The third is the first information report, or FIR. Now, most people associate FIRs with police stations reporting a theft, an accident, etc., and that's correct.
So how does it fit in a business context?
Well, it fits the definition perfectly. It's a formal, structured report created immediately following a specific, non-routine, often serious event that falls outside normal operations. While less common perhaps in daily business, a major incident might require an internal FIR-like document for insurance or legal purposes. It's about immediate documentation of an unexpected event.
All right, we've covered routine and special reports. Let's circle back and really solidify the two core functional types we mentioned earlier. Informational and analytical. These seem to define what the report actually does with the information.
They really do. Let's start with the informational report. Its main job is just to provide the necessary details and facts about a specific topic, laying out the information clearly.
And the key structural point here was
Chronological order. If the report is documenting something over time, like company growth, the details need to be presented sequentially. Page 95 in our source material specifically calls out chronological order as key for clarity in informational reports. Just the facts, in order.
okay, clear and sequential. Now contrast that with the analytical report.
The analytical report has a different mission. It's the problem solver. It starts with identifying an issue or problem, digs into discovering the underlying causes through analysis and interpretation, and this is crucial. It must conclude with concrete suggestions or recommendations based on that analysis.
It has to offer solutions, not just information.
Exactly. And that problem-solving process within an analytical report follows a very specific sequence. You don't just jump to conclusions.
Right, there was a sequence mentioned for the analytical method. What was it again?
Okay, step by step. First, you draft the problem statement clearly. Second, you evolve criteria. What does a successful solution even look like? Third, you suggest alternatives and evaluate them against those criteria you just set. And finally, based on that evaluation, you draw the conclusion that supports your recommendation.
Draft problem, set criteria, evaluate alternatives, conclude. A very logical flow.
It has to be. And that logical flow itself often follows one of two main structural patterns. This affects how the argument is presented to the reader. We're talking inductive versus deductive logic.
Inductive and deductive reasoning. How do they apply to structuring a report?
Great question. It really dictates the flow. An inductive report structure moves from the specific to the general. You present the specific data points, the observations, the evidence first.
Show the working, basically.
Kind of, yeah. You build the case piece by piece. For example, you might show rising sales in market A, then market B, then market C. And then, based on all those specific examples, you draw the general conclusion that the new strategy is working overall. The reader sees the evidence before the main point.
So the conclusion comes at the end in an inductive report. What about deductive?
Deductive is the reverse. It starts with the general idea, the main point, the hypothesis, or the conclusion right up front.
Bottom line first.
Exactly. You might start with, our analysis indicates we should enter the European market. Then, the rest of the report provides the specific data, analysis, and reasoning to support that initial claim. It tests the general premise against specific facts.
Why choose one over the other?
It often depends on the audience and the context. Deductive can be good for busy executives who want the main takeaway immediately. Inductive can sometimes feel more persuasive, building the case logically before stating the conclusion. The choice shapes the reader's entire experience.
Okay, makes sense. Now, underpinning all these reports, whether they're informational or analytical, long or short, is the data, the research. This brings us back to that third classification, academic or research reports.
Right. These are typically linked to educational settings, student projects, theses, dissertations. They are reports prepared for courses or degrees.
And the defining characteristic you mentioned.
Manageability. The research problem tackled in an academic report usually has to be tightly defined, manageable in its size, its scope, and crucially, manageable within the time and resource constraints available to the student or researcher.
But the research methods themselves, primary and secondary, apply much more broadly, right? Not just in academia.
Oh, absolutely. Any serious report, academic or business, relies on solid research. And that research falls into two fundamental types, primary and secondary.
Okay, let's start with primary research. What defines that?
Primary research is data you collect yourself specifically for the purpose of this report or project. It's original data. The source material also calls it empirical research.
Empirical, meaning observable, experienced directly.
Exactly. The information comes directly from the source. Think conducting your own surveys, running focus groups, doing interviews, making direct observations, conducting experiments. You generate the data.
And there were two types within primary.
Yes, two basic approaches. First, exploratory research. This is typically open-ended, maybe less structured initially. Its main goal is to help you better understand or define a problem that might be a bit vague at first. It's like reconnaissance.
Exploring the terrain.
Precisely. Then, once exploratory research has helped clarify the specific issue, you often move to specific research. This is much more focused, precise in scope, using targeted methods to solve the exact problem that the exploratory phase identified.
So exploratory finds the what? Specific finds the how. Like a flashlight, then a laser beam.
That's a great way to put it. Flashlight, then laser beam. Okay, so that's primary research collecting new data. What's the alternative?
The alternative is secondary research. This is where you gather information from data that already exists. Someone else collected it for some other purpose, but you can use it for your research.
And the big advantage here.
This was flagged as a key point. Secondary research is generally the cheapest form of research because the heavy lifting, the cost of actually collecting that data, was already done by somebody else.
That's a huge factor in many projects. And this existing data, the secondary data, can come from two places.
Right. It splits into internal research and external research.
Okay, explain those.
Internal research uses data from within your own organization. Things like past sales reports, previous market analyses, employee records, customer feedback databases, information the company already has.
And external?
External research draws on sources outside your organization. This could be industry journals, government statistics databases, reports from market research firms, academic studies, competitor websites publicly available, or purchased data. The key is you didn't collect it originally for this specific project.
Okay, so research done, analysis complete. Now you actually have to structure the report itself. Generally speaking, most formal reports have three main chunks.
Three main sections.
Yeah, think of it as 1, the preliminary pages, stuff like the title page, maybe a letter of transmittal or authorization, table of contents. 2, the main text or body, this is the core, with the summary, introduction, methodology, findings. And 3, the end matter, things like the bibliography and any appendices.
Let's focus on that main text. That's where the real substance is. Can we break down the essential parts within that section?
Absolutely. Let's start with the summary, often called the executive summary. This is arguably the most important part for many readers.
Because executives are busy.
Exactly. Many will only read the summary, so it has to be a complete standalone miniature version of the entire report. Think of a well-structured news article gives you everything you need quickly.
And what must it contain?
It's got to include the report's main objectives, a brief overview of the methodology used, a concise summary of the key findings, the main conclusions drawn, and the final recommendations, all packed in there.
Okay, summary is critical for the time pressed. What comes next in the main body? The introduction.
Right. The introduction sets the scene. It provides context. It should discuss the background of the problem or topic, maybe looking at the broader industry, macro level, and the specific situation within the organization, micro level. It gives the reader the total picture. And importantly, it should also mention what relevant research has already been done on this topic by others, sets the stage, and positions your work.
Okay, context set. Then comes the methodology section. What's its purpose?
Methodology is all about transparency and credibility. It needs to explain clearly and precisely how the research was conducted. What did you actually do to get the results?
So details like,
It typically includes the specific objectives, again, maybe why the study is significant, a detailed description of the methods used, surveys, experiments, data analysis techniques, how any hypotheses were formulated and tested, if it's an analytical report, the specific tools used for analysis. And also, crucially, any limitations of the methodology or the study. It allows the reader to judge the reliability and validity of your findings.
it answers the how did you figure this out question.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the fourth part, the findings or results section. This is where you present what you discovered.
And the key here is clarity.
Clarity and simplicity in language are vital. Just present the facts, the data, the outcomes of the analysis. Now, findings can be purely descriptive, just stating what you found. Or they can be explanatory, trying to explain why things are the way they are.
And if they are explanatory, there were specific models mentioned for structuring them.
Yes, this is important for analytical reports. 3 main models for presenting explanatory findings. Model A is hypothesis testing. This is very direct. The focus is on showing how the hypothesis was tested and whether it was supported or not. And this model is often associated with specific statistical tests.
Ah, yes, the tests. Which ones are mentioned? These sound like potential MCQ fodder.
Definitely.
Right.
The source material explicitly mentions the chi-square test that's often used for comparing categorical data. Also, the time and money test, more of a managerial assessment of efficiency, perhaps. And the z-test, typically used with larger sample sizes or when population variance is known. Knowing these specific test names signals a certain level of analytical rigor.
Chi-square, time and money, z-test. Got it. What's Model B for findings?
Model B is the focused argument. Think of it like a lawyer building a case. This structure focuses intensely on one central issue or argument. It deliberately cuts out any unnecessary detail to make the core point as clear and persuasive as possible. Maximum clarity, point by point.
Streamlined for impact. And Model C?
Model C is the structured model. This is often used when dealing with complex situations or lots of quantitative data. Here, the author might propose a new system, a new framework, a new model, like a new workflow or organizational structure.
And the requirements for this model.
2 key things. It must have empirical relevance, meaning it's based on real data, not just theory. And second, it has to seriously consider the practical implementation aspects. Proposing a brilliant model is useless if you can't actually implement it in the real world.
Okay, so summary, intro, methodology, findings, using one of those models if explanatory. What's the final piece, usually in the end matter?
The 5th key component is the presentation of bibliography or references. This is simply the comprehensive list of every single source you consulted and used, books, articles, websites, reports. It always goes at the end, and it's fundamental for academic honesty and allowing others to verify your sources.
Now, while those core components are pretty standard, some fields have even more specific structural requirements, right? Like technical reports.
Absolutely. If you're in a field like engineering, computer science, or hard sciences, a formal technical report often follows a very precise, mandated structure. Page 105 of our source outlines 7 specific components.
7 components for a technical report. Let's list them out.
Okay. 1, abstract, similar to the executive summary, but often more technical. 2, introduction, setting the technical context and goals. 3, related work. This is crucial, a thorough review of existing technical literature and previous approaches.
So showing you know the field. What's next?
4, outline of the rest of the paper, a roadmap for the reader because these can get dense. 5, body of report. This is the main technical meat, the detailed methods, experiments, algorithms, proofs.
Okay, 5 down. What are the last 2? These sounded particularly unique.
They are. 6, realization. This isn't just theory. This section details the actual implementation. How was the system built? What specific tools or platforms were used? What challenges came up during the practical build that weren't obvious in the theory?
Realization. So proof of concept, basically, showing it works in practice.
Exactly that. It bridges theory and practice, and that leads directly to the final required component. 7. Evaluation. You have to demonstrate how well your system or approach performs
How do you do that?
through things like quantitative performance metrics, maybe comparisons to existing systems, results from end user studies, real or simulated. Sometimes you might even mention external groups or companies that have adopted or are testing your technology. Without evaluation, the technical contribution isn't fully validated.
Abstract intro, related work, outline, body, realization, evaluation. A very specific structure.
Yeah.
Now, how does this compare to, say, an academic project proposal?
The proposal or synopsis.
Yeah.
Often required for postgraduate students, like in management or engineering programs, its main purpose is really administrative and organizational, at least initially.
How so?
It forces the student, before they start the main research, to frame their intended study within a clear, standard structure. It makes them define the problem, the scope, the methods up front. It enhances clarity for both the student and their supervisor.
And what does a good proposal need to contain?
The guidelines emphasize including a brief background, maybe on the company or context if relevant, and very clearly stated research objectives. What exactly are you trying to achieve? And how does it relate to the subject area?
Is there a standard structure for the proposal itself?
Yes, typically includes about 8 parts. 1, cover page. 2, table of contents. 3, introduction, background. 4, the research problem section. This is key, with specific problem statements and maybe initial hypothesis development. Then 5, the research design, how you plan to conduct the study. This is detailed on page 110. 6, a realistic time frame. 7, acknowledge limitations of the proposed study. And 8, initial references or bibliography.
So it's a mini report about the report you intend to write.
In essence, yes, it's the blueprint for the research.
Now, this focus on structure, whether it's a technical report or a business proposal, seems very different from other kinds of writing, like journalism.
That's a really important contrast the source material makes. Writing a formal report for, say, busy managers is fundamentally different from how a media reporter writes.
How so? What's the core difference in approach?
A media reporter's primary goal, often, is to grab attention and make the publication sell. They typically use the inverted pyramid structure.
Meaning?
Most important information first. Quick summary in the lead paragraph, basic facts next, maybe a quote, then progressively less critical details further down. It's designed so someone can stop reading at any point and still get the gist.
But a formal business or academic report assumes a different reader.
Completely. It assumes a reader who needs the full logical argument. They need the context first, introduction, then the process, methodology, then the evidence, findings, then the conclusions and recommendations. It builds the case sequentially, often using that inductive or deductive logic we talked about. You can't just mimic newspaper style for a formal report. The purpose and audience expectations are entirely different. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've really decoded the architecture of professional reports today. If you've been following along, you now have the distilled foundational knowledge. You should be comfortable with the key definitions, like the crucial difference between an information report needing chronological flow and analytical report demanding a problem statement and recommendations. You've got the 5 non-negotiable planning steps committed to memory, essential for avoiding errors. You can identify different report types like routine inspection reports or the critical PAR, the performance appraisal report. And hopefully you flag those specific analytical tools mentioned in the findings section like the chi-square test and the z-test, and you appreciate the practical importance of sections like realization in a formal technical report.
Absolutely. This really does give you, the learner, a significant edge. It's not just about knowing what a report looks like, but understanding the why and the how, the logic, the process, the classifications behind its construction. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought, a challenge really, that stems from that research section we discussed. It's about objectivity.
Okay.
The source material offered a warning. Don't fall into the trap of finding an easy answer which fits into your worldview and then writing it up as unassailable fact.
Confirmation bias.
Exactly, which raises the fundamental ongoing challenge for anyone writing a report, especially an analytical one where interpretation is key. How do you actively fight your own biases during planning and analysis? How do you ensure your interpretation genuinely reflects the data and that your final recommendations are truly objective, offering real insight, rather than just conveniently confirming what you wanted to find when you first drafted that problem statement?
That leap from just collecting data to providing truly unbiased, actionable insight.
That, right there, is the toughest, but maybe the most valuable skill in professional report writing. It's a constant process of critical self reflection.